So time for us to move on to our panel session. Welcome back from the break. I'll go ahead and introduce our guest speakers, and then we will proceed where they can offer an additional introduction and we can begin our questions. So thank you for coming tonight. We have Alex Hubers. He's a graduate student at the University of Iowa working on his PhD in computer science. His research interests include strong functional programming, type theory, and programming language theory. Prior to entering his doctorate program, he worked as VP of Engineering for GetMyBoat.com, a peer-to-peer boat rental marketplace. Apoorv Ingle is currently a PhD student at University of Iowa. His research interests are design and implementation of functional programming languages. Before joining University of Iowa, he completed his master's degree from University of Kansas and has experience as a software developer for an investment bank and e-commerce. Jamil Gafur is a PhD student at the University of Iowa in their computer science department. He also gave a talk earlier this evening on machine learning. Thank you very much for sharing your talk. His research spans multiple areas. And of course, he's currently focused on machine learning, which is why he gave that talk, scientific computing and distributed optimization. Previously, he worked at Los Alamos National Lab after graduating with his bachelor's from CUNY Lehman College. There are, on average, 23 rubber ducks surrounding Jamil at any given time. And one of them even has a bachelor's degree in computer science from CUNY Lehman College. Yes, that is the truth. He can tell you more later. Narine Hall. She's a data-driven entrepreneur, data scientist, problem solver, and faculty member at Champlain College in Vermont. She's the founder and CEO of InSpace, and her career has evolved in the intersection of tech industry and academia. Her passion is education, machine learning, and the technology of the future. She also says challenges are great opportunities for innovation. So thank you all for coming with us tonight. And I can go on to share each individual slide very quickly. I'm going to ask that we start in the order in which I introduced you, just if you could share a little bit more about yourselves, and then we can begin with more panel questions. So moving a few slides back, we have Alex. Can you share a little bit more about yourself, please?
Yeah. Yeah, my name's Alex. You've heard this so far. I think what I'd emphasize is that, so I graduated in 2015 from undergrad, and I had a pretty strong conviction I didn't want to go to grad school, despite being a good student and all my professors saying so. I didn't trust them, and so I worked for about 5 years and decided it wasn't for me. So if you're someone maybe you're an undergraduate and you're on the fence, or you want to know a bit about, I worked for small web agencies and then like a about a medium-sized startup. So that question is a pertinent one to computer science undergrads, I think, and sometimes not talked about. So I'm interested in answering stuff about that.
Very cool. Thank you. I'm going to ask Apoorv if you can please share a little bit more about yourself.
Hi.
We cannot hear you, and I think you froze.
I was at University of Kansas for a couple of years, and I'm originally from India, so I moved to the States about 5 years now. So yeah, and I was also not of the opinion of getting into grad school because school had kind of tired me out. So after working in industry, I decided to get back. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jamil, can you share a little bit more about yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Jamil. I graduated from CUNY Lehman College with me and my duck with a bachelor's degree in computer science. It was a lot of fun. Uh, I'm the kind of person your parents tell you don't exist. So like nobody just wakes up one day and decides to go to grad school. And that's kind of what I did. And like I chose my major by flipping a coin, and that's how I got computer science. A lot of the things that I've done have been happy coincidences. So I'm always excited to see how like, oh, just a random thing I decided to do one weekend ended up spiraling into like my whole life and career. And I'd be more than happy to talk about that with any individual person and see how that goes. Oh, the other side of the coin was pre-law. I took a whole bunch of computer science, law, woodworking, metal shop, and a whole bunch of stuff in high school. And I got the best grades in computer science and law. Couldn't make a decision for the life of me. Got into my undergraduate community college, flipped a coin, got computer science, and said, you know, if that's what fate had for me, got to follow through with it and keep going. So far, you know, I do hate my existence sometimes because I find some code that isn't the best, and I have problems with implementing it. But you know, you do what you got to do, and I'm happy I made that. I'm happy that coin landed on tails.
Yeah, I 100% thought you were going to say the other side was heads. So, I actually thought that was what the question was. I'm like, is it important? All right.
Thank you.
Onward.
We're going to go to Narine next.
Yeah, coin flip definitely works. Hi again. Yeah, so I have a little bit of a different story, I guess. I actually always knew I wanted to go to grad school since about 6th grade. In 6th grade, actually, so someone gave me like this floppy disk. I don't know if you guys remember those things at this point, but it was like this one, and they were like, look, if you put it into any computer, you can like get all the data from it. And this wasn't true, but it really got me thinking about it. And I was like, that is really cool. So hacking is really what I was passionate about at first. Like, you know, I just thought it was so cool. Like it was so powerful. And then, you know, there was like this turtle program, and I could literally make this turtle do anything I wanted. And I thought that's so cool. Like, it's like feeling the control, and all of a sudden in computer, I could just build all sorts of things. And that's how I got into programming. And I have been pretty obsessed since then. You know, went to college and then got my PhD at the University of Vermont. I did master's first. And, you know, slowly I kind of transitioned into data science. And I found that it was really cool to be in data science because I could sort of flip different hats. Like I could be in business 1 minute and then statistics and then computer science. Like a few days I would just be coding through nights. And it was like really fun for me to switch gears quite often. It was just, I found it fascinating. And just recently, like, you know, like I was kind of telling you guys, this is like a really interesting example where we were having this challenge, and me and my co-founder, who is in Armenia, she's like a brilliant software developer. And we were like, why don't we just write this code? And we basically just stayed up for 3-4 nights. I don't know what happened, lots of coffee. And then we came up with the MVP, and then, you know, we had some previous code we built on. And it was just like really fun. Since then, we built the whole platform in a month with like 7 more engineers. Yeah, and I think it's really cool to be able to, you know, when you're coming from computer science background, it's really fun to be a CEO because like the product is first and development is first, and it's like a very different kind of company that you build. If you were coming from business side, it's very different, you know, perspectives. So far, I'm really enjoying it. It's really fun. Like, yeah.
Very cool. Thank you. So thank you all for sharing. I'm going to move us. We have our first panel question, and we can answer this in different order. Academia versus industry. Why don't we start by delineating the different environments? And Alex, I'll ask if you can start, because I know that this is a question you were quite interested in answering. Academia, startups, small companies, large companies. Can we start by talking a little bit about the different environments?
Yeah, I think the large point I had was, and you'll see it there, is industry is in quotes, right? So if you're I don't know, I'm sure every undergraduate institution or college might be different, but when I was an undergraduate, it was just like, it was this binary. It was like there was school or industry. But no one in industry, once I was in industry, ever said, yep, we work in industry. Industry is the name of what we do. We're industry people. So, I mean, it's just this huge heterogeneous mixture, right? I worked for a very small company for a bit, and then a startup, which grew from like a small to medium to large size startup. And that's very different than, say, Ava, you worked at IBM, and that's a large company and there's varying degrees of red tape, I imagine, that you maybe wouldn't have with a startup. So I guess that was the well, sorry, my point was that they're all different. But if we were to delineate how they're different, I definitely thought when I got out there would be more rules and people would know what they were doing, and that didn't happen in the startup for sure.
I would say there's definitely process, as you put red tape when it's a large company that's been around for years. Whereas in the startup, you can be more flexible. You have to be more flexible, I guess, right?
Yeah, I would say like when you're wearing a lot of different hats and pretending like the hat fits sometimes because no one else is around to do it. So especially if you're a computer scientist and you end up working maybe you start as a mid-level engineer doing software development. If you don't know, MySQL, if you don't know Nginx or something, if you suddenly will. You'll be learning how to do systems engineering as well as front-end design, So.
Thanks. So Apoorv, can you share your perspective? So you were in an investment bank and you've worked in e-commerce as well as currently doing your PhD. What would you like to share with everyone?
Yeah, so like I said, right after my undergrad, I was working for an investment bank for a couple of years. And that was red tape, right? Because it was a big investment bank. And because it was also a software that was supporting finance, like on Wall Street, they had this huge, thing about security and whatnot that you have to follow. And because it was a big firm, there were so many people, you just did not have an opportunity to explore different things. At one point, it would be, this is your job, do it, and you're done. And that's kind of not what I wanted at that point. Sure, I mean, I'm not saying that working for a big company is not good. What I'm saying is that that's not what I wanted to do, and that's why I thought, well, maybe it's I had not had any flavor of academia, like what it is to do research, and with contrast, especially working in large companies, you don't have to deal with people so much, which was quite different in large companies, right? It's whenever you have to add one line of code, you would probably talk to 5 different people, starting from your manager to the person who wants that change to the QA people. But sometimes, you might have to go and talk to the trader, in my case, like, do you really want this? or like the business people the business analysts who would give you, requirements. So in academia, it was so much more flexible. I do not work in a team. It's just me, maybe my advisor sometimes, who helps me out, answer questions that I have. But then it's like an independent journey that you have to do with much less money involved. So yeah, I think that's my experience.
Thanks, Apoorv. Narine, you're a faculty member, you're an entrepreneur. Can you share a little with us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of interesting. So I feel like I live right in that cross section of industry and academia at the moment. So like I teach, I just got promoted to associate professor, but I'm also the CEO. and everyone is wondering how on earth this is going to work. So what I have done so far, I had a few grants. So basically, I'm teaching one course this semester just to survive as a CEO. It's a ton of work. It's a pretty good 24/7, but it's kind of interesting. But I also love teaching, so that's why I kind of felt like I needed to go into classroom. I need to use the software in real life to kind of really appreciate it. And so far, it's going really great. One thing I would say, so when I finished grad school, by the way, grad school is incredibly hard. So I want to sort of huge shout out for all of you sticking there. It's really hard. I feel like, after grad school, it's like just so much fun. Like for me, at least that's been the case. Everything else you do afterwards is just easy. Like you don't question everything. Like I feel like in grad school, there's a lot of questioning. Is this the right path? Like, because everything is so hard. But after grad school, I did my grad school in 3 years, and that's about as much of it as I could take. It was like really fun. But afterwards, I actually went to work at IBM Watson. Now, Watson is an incredible place. Like, and it's this huge office. There's like 3,000 people in this big office, and all PhDs, like incredibly smart people. Like we had the best lunchtime conversations ever, like best stuff. But what happened there? I actually accidentally came up with a really cool idea and then started telling my colleagues. And at some point, I actually got to meet Jeannie Rometty, who is the CEO at IBM. And this is very rare. Like there's like 10 different layers of management on top of between me and her. At that point, I was just starting. And the fact that I went to headquarters to meet her was like really cool. But what was interesting, there was like actually dress code. Like I had to have specific dress code to even go to the third floor where all exec level folks were. And I was like, okay, I'm a programmer. I don't have to do this. So it was kind of an interesting balance there. But it was an incredible meeting. But then afterwards, I realized that a lot of time when people have really cool ideas, they would write patents about them. And then I had like this colleague who had like, I don't know, 30 patents in his office. And I realized that's what happens to some ideas in big corporations. They just become really cool accomplishments, like in terms of patents, but you don't actually see them go live. Like you don't see them go take wings and become products that people use. And I think for me, that moment when you see someone use your product is like when it becomes like real. Like, for example, like when I see professors come to InSpace and like, as soon as I show the breakout rooms, like their eyes just light up and like, they just like, and then they can't stop talking about how cool it is. And that for me is like the most rewarding feeling in the world. Like when you build software that makes people feel good and happier in some ways. So that's when I realized that I love, I can't live in big corporate companies. Like I just couldn't beat it. Like, and so I went to work in a startup. So I worked in a startup, awesome. But then this was a data startup, and it was interesting, but it was very businessy. So I didn't actually see the product like really making a big impact. So then I went to academia to teach. And that was great. So like, I love teaching. I think it's actually very rewarding, but I also always like love industry. Like I like actually hands-on doing things. So that's how I end up sort of in this right in the middle of everything, academia and industry.
Awesome. I like how you mentioned IBM as well. And InSpace is so cool. I'm so glad that you said, let's try it. We tried it out and really cool too. I really like it. So thank you for letting us try that out instead of just using the breakout rooms as usual. Is really cool. And so there's someone else here, my co-organizer, also worked at IBM Watson. I worked at IBM Watson, and those lunch conversations last you a lifetime. So many interesting, smart, fun conversations with really cool people. So that was one of the perks, and walking around the building at lunchtime, avoiding the geese. But yes, Jamil, how about you? Can you delineate the different environments for us?
Well, I'm in actually a funny situation because after I graduated Lehman College, I went to Los Alamos National Lab. First of all, the Manhattan Project, for those of you who don't know, didn't happen in Manhattan for the whole time. They ended up moving to New Mexico. So I had a fun surprise of being forced to move to New Mexico when I thought I could just, take the 6th train to Manhattan. That was very annoying. But the funny thing about the research lab is I think it fit really nicely between academia and industry. Because it's a research lab, we were doing, of course, a lot of research from things like satellite development to different nuclear designs and everything in between, even COVID-19 testing and all of that fun stuff. We were on the cutting edge. However, we also had the whole point of creating deliverables for the government, because the research lab is, of course, under the government, and we need to produce stuff in order to get money. So it's a really interesting fact, because you had a whole bunch of people who were doing research and stuff of that nature, and also teaching, but we were also having to be forced to be under that red tape where we need to make sure, like, we can't give our stuff to the wrong people. We have to make sure that everything's protected. We have to make sure if we have any ideas to put it up the proper chain of command. So it's really interesting how we were seeing at Alex how a lot of red tape and not a lot of people knowing what they were doing. And Narine, well, everybody knew what they were doing, and they had these really nice plaques. To now moving over to the academia side, we're like, yeah, it's really nice that we got these things out, but we were always thinking about what's next. How do we go from finishing this project, which might be updating the satellite software, to something completely different, to like working on making sure that we're getting the correct points to keep the satellites on the right trajectory, which, yeah, they're working on satellites, but they're completely different projects. So we'd always be juggling these different things. And it's always interesting to see how, even though I was at the nice intersection of academia and industry, how far apart that they can actually be in differences. And that's my little 2 cents on that.
Thank you. So don't mute yourself just yet. We're going to ask you to kick us off on the next question.
Sure, I'll sit up straight then. Oh, man.
Yes, please. So have you experienced imposter syndrome? And do you have any advice on how to manage it?
Yes. The last time I had imposter syndrome was 15 minutes before this presentation. And that is for a fact, because I had a meeting with my advisor, very smart lady, and I was like listening to everything she was saying. And I gave her like, oh, I worked for the past month on this really nice paper. It's about 20 pages long. And she, in the meeting, she was like, it's all wrong. It's not bad, but it's on my level. And that was always fun to have my work that I worked for the past month to be ripped apart. But that's a really good thing. Whenever imposter syndrome hits me, there are a couple of things that I think about. The first one is that if people give me the time of day to tell me things, or if I'm in a group with other people, that means they've acknowledged that I have potential. I might not be on the same level as them, but I sure as heck have a lot of potential that they're willing to give me the time of day. The second thing is, every time I get imposter syndrome, I like to flip it around and say, one day I'm going to be the person people get imposter syndrome from. So I might be getting imposter syndrome right now, but if I get over that, eventually like 5 or 6 other people will get imposter syndrome from me. And that might not be a nice way of looking at things, but it makes me feel better about myself. So as long as imposter syndrome is a barrier. Once you push that barrier down, no matter how you go about pushing it down, it makes you move forward. And moving forward is the goal at the end of the day. And I think that's a pretty good goal to achieve. So getting imposter syndrome is good. Getting past it is better.
Thank you. Narine, can you provide your 2 or 5 or 10 cents on imposter syndrome as well?
Yeah, totally. And, so I watched this TED Talk, and it just completely flipped everything for me for imposter syndrome. And just kind of, I love that they did this. And, as like women in tech, like you're always like outnumbered. That's like a thing, right? And so growing up, you just can't avoid it. Like it was just like to college and everything. But then like when I watched this TED Talk, and there's like this woman who talks about sort of fake it till you make it. And it just really just like clicked something in me. And like, honestly, like I didn't like felt it ever since, which is like so weird, right? to actually say that. And, it was just like, you just kind of realize that like, if you just kind of, you are what you think you are, right? And this is like really important. Obviously, you want to make sure you stay real and like don't overdo that. But it's just kind of like interesting. And just actually very recently, when we were just starting in space, what happened is like, as a computer scientist, as a tech person, like I'm like, okay, I'm great at coding, but when it comes to business and sales and marketing, like I'm basically not, like I haven't mastered that yet. And so, I was talking to somebody, and they were like, what are you talking about? Like, as a founder, you're the best person to sell your product. So why are you trying to find this magic person who's going to sell the product? And that was the moment I realized that I think the most important thing is like really finding a network of people and that you respect and you really kind of have respect for. And then once you have that, then you can always go to them when you're like sort of in this moment of questioning. Now in grad school, it's very hard because all grad school is built like imposter syndrome. I think it's just like a very, very common thing. I can't imagine there's an easy way out of it. But I think afterwards, it definitely does get better over time as well. But having a good network of people who can sort of always be there for you is really important. And the other thing I also, so this wasn't on TED, this is somewhere else, that like the power of yet. Just always never say, I don't know how to do this. Always say like, I don't know how to do this yet. And immediately your mindset changes and, you know, you just realize that you're a work in progress like everybody else is.
Thank you. Yes, I've been quoting, I don't know if people are watching the chat, but you are what you think you are, stay real, Narine Hall. And getting imposter syndrome is good. Getting past it is better, Jamil Gafur. Alex, can you provide your spare change on this?
Yeah, sure. I feel like I'm affected a little bit less by imposter syndrome than I used to be. I mean, I do remember right when I graduated from college and I got my first job, I had literal conversations with people where I said, don't tell my boss I'm an idiot. Like, don't let anyone know. I remember thinking like they're gonna figure it out here in a second. So I just worked really hard and then I figured stuff out. So I feel like I've been through that process enough. I'm just a little bit more comfortable being uncomfortable. And like I think I can't contribute more on that topic than what we said, which is just yet. I will say I also agree that grad school is fascinating and that you'll meet people that are smarter than you have ever met before. I have office hours where I have students, right, where I'm like, I'm actually kind of confused how they're struggling with this. And then I have a meeting with another student in our group, and I feel like he feels the same way about me. He's like, how are you still struggling with this? So it's like back to back. I go from this, you know, the mentor to being completely uneducated, you know, so there's always a way to go. And yeah, it's just like, I think Narine said, you just just don't worry about it.
I like, thank you. I'm quoting you as well. I worked really hard and figured stuff out. Another quote, I'm a little more comfortable being uncomfortable. So these are really good takeaways here. Apoorv, you have any spare change for us? I'm sure you do.
Yeah. So imposter syndrome, I think it did not even exist in my vocabulary when I was an undergrad. I knew that I was not good enough, right? That constant feeling that you have. It was only in maybe grad school that I attended a talk and they talked about imposter syndrome. I was like, this is what it is. Like everyone feels it. Like it's just not me that has been feeling not good enough. And another aspect of that talk was basically saying that, well, imposter syndrome is something that drives you to be better, right? Because if you did not have imposter syndrome in the first place, and if you thought that you were not good enough, you would just feel that you are okay, and you would just be satisfied with what you are. So it managing it is more like it keeps you going forward. That's how I look at imposter syndrome. Well, sometimes you feel bad about it, because especially in grad school when my projects is not does not have progress, or things seem to not be working. That's when it hits hard. It's like, well, does not make sense. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not good enough. That's a very easy spiral to go down in. But it's it's just taking a day at a time. I really like Narine's point where she talked about network, right? You need to have good friends around you, and your family or someone who you can talk to, and they tell you that it's okay. You just have to go forward.
You're a good friend, Apoorv.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you, Apoorv, to not mute yourself yet, I've also quoted you. Imposter syndrome is something that drives you to be better. Managing it keeps you moving forward. So really good takeaways, everyone, on imposter syndrome. Yes, it's real. Yes, we all experience it. And it's okay to be uncomfortable. We learn to get used to it. It means we're growing. Thank you so much. So next question we have, Apoorv will ask you to kick us off. Can you draw a comparison between undergraduate life versus the real world and versus graduate life too, maybe for us?
Sure. So undergraduate was like a fun place, I would say. It was, making new friends. You're still not in adult life, so it's easy to make friends. Versus when you get into real world, you maybe move to a different place. You have, a new friend circle that's not even formed. So that kind of transition is hard, but it's different. The other thing that was different was the amount of independence that you have. Graduate, you are kind of constantly being told what to do, versus in real world, when you go out, you can choose what you want to do. There is kind of more flexibility there. I mean, that's not certainly the case for everyone else, but that's what I felt in my place, of course. So in real world, things were actually real, right? You could affect people, and that kind of responsibility that you have, saying that you're thinking about when you make a decision, you're either, at least for me, when in my workplace, like, oh, you're doing this, the responsibility is either saving money for the bank or making money for the bank. And if you're not doing it, then it's not good enough. In undergrad life, you do not have any of those obligations for other people, especially when it comes to money. So that's something of a different thing that I had in working in the real world. In academia, it's more, or in grad school, it's less impactful in a way that you're trying to solve problems that no one cares about. So there's maybe like one or two people who might find that interesting, but the thing is that people just don't know that the problem that you're solving is important. Maybe that's the case, which is a 10-year down the line kind of a important problem that you want to solve. So yeah, that's my take on the comparison.
Thank you. Alex, can you share a little bit the comparison or difference, similarities?
I liked undergraduate more. If any of you know a way back, let me know. And if any of you are undergrads, never leave. Outside of that, you have to buy groceries, do your laundry, get fatter. I'm not a great person to ask.
Thank you. Jamil, how about you? Your undergraduate experience, real world grad experience?
I'm the complete opposite of Alex. I hated my undergraduate life because I wasn't a big fan of the computer science department at Lehman College. I know some of you might be in the computer science department at Lehman College for the undergraduate program. I think, well, personally, I'm not saying anything against Lehman, but all of the classes and things, and just not even for Lehman, any class that I take, you have these specific deadlines where you need to finish the classwork and you need to finish these projects. But that's not how the real world is. You have more deviation and room for error. So instead of having a project every week, you might have one project for like 2 or 3 months or even a year. And that gives you the time to like slowly take apart things and like fully understand what you want, or like nitpick a very small part of the problem. I wasn't a big fan of school because like I didn't get the chance to nitpick what I wanted to. I just had to get the grade and get as good as I can. So I really like the real world. The reason I went back into my PhD is this, I don't like taking the classes. I've always complained to Alex and Apoorv, just let me do the research. I came to the PhD to do the research. I like learning about new things. And I don't, and you're right, Alex, and Apoorv, like, oh, you know, nobody really, like 2 or 3 people in the whole world might care about my research. But those 2 or 3 people are worth the time. Because like I get to sit down and I like get to work on the projects that I find interesting and the projects that I want to do. Not, oh, I have to do a Hello World projects in Julia or these or assembly or something. It's something that I find myself with, that I'm passionate about, and I get to move forward with my passion.
Thanks. So you're not stuck building your general skills. You can focus on what you like, and that's why you don't want to go back, as opposed to Alex, who might want to go back because it was an easier time. Narine, can you draw a comparison for us, please?
Yeah, I would say I'm kind of on the Jamil side on this one. Undergrad was kind of hard because I went to school in Armenia for my undergrad in applied math, and this was like incredibly competitive, department, and it was really cool. Like I learned a ton, which kind of really set me ahead on the things, but it was really hard stuff. So I feel like afterwards going to grad school felt like really easy, and then real life is super easy compared to all that. So like at least that's how it felt for me. And I think for me, it's more of like, being able to manage your own interests, not have external deadlines, have sort of internal motivation for learning. Like I can just like take a Coursera course and like do it overnight. But like, when I have like external deadlines, they're always kind of trickier for me. So I like sort of passion learning versus just kind of structured. So yeah, I find real life much easier. Like if you just manage and schedule everything the right way, it feels like there's much more space for flexibility there.
Thank you. And I'm going to say, please don't mute yourself yet. I'm going to ask you if you can kick us off on the next question. Sure. So how does one move forward? Whether it be finding areas of interest, deciding on a research path, or gainful employment, where they want to work, let's say, finding a mentor, an advisor. Of course, answer this how you see fit, but these are the areas we want to address, and deciding whether a school, company, advisor, manager, team is a good fit. So how does one move forward?
Well, I got the tough question here. Okay. So so like basically, how do you find interest or deciding on research path? I think one of the biggest things is like really just putting some upfront work on like a lot of different directions to give them enough of a chance to try before you make a decision. Because like a lot of things that I've been really interested in at first, like I felt like giving up because it was kind of not super easy to go that direction. Like deep learning is like one thing I really enjoy, but like initially, like, you kind of have to explore it enough first. And then finding mentors or advisors. Like I know every job I started, the first thing I did, like when I showed up to the company, I literally just looked around and found people that I really admire what they're doing. And I want to sort of either be them in a few years or sort of be friends with them, right? And then I started reaching out and connecting with them. For me, usually it's been really finding like other women who are doing really well. And that really is important for like, being able to create that network. And once you have that network, it's just like so many times, like I have leaned back to that network. It's actually incredible. Like as you go back and like, look how many times it could be really wrong. It could have gone really wrong, but like having like a friend there or like a right advice at the right moment really kind of was really cool. And yes, you can always flip the coin. I see the chat.
Yes, flipping a coin. That's a good one, right? So, yep. Apoorv, how about you? In some spare change or a few cents, how does one move forward?
Yeah, so let me go one by one. So finding areas of interest are, at least for me, it was the opposite. I mean, maybe it's all, sometimes people always know that, oh, this looks so cool, I just want to do it, right? Sometimes it just clicks. But for me, it was more like, okay, let's just try thing A, let's just try thing B. How does biology work? Or does that interest me? Does chemistry work? Does that interest me? Or does math? How does math work? Oh, I don't understand any of math. Now it's CS was that's how I chose CS. So and then within CS, machine learning. Oh, real numbers are too hard. I cannot understand what statistics are. So just think about natural numbers, and that's so it's a painful way of trying to find what you like, but without as what Narine said, without putting the work in, you would never find out what you really like. um, for finding a mentor or an advisor, it's the difference between a mentor. So a lot of times I was kind of confused between the terms of a mentor versus a boss, right? Or an advisor. These three, all these three people are kind of who are above your level, but I thought they were kind of the same, but all three are very different. And finding them is again just talk to people, and you have to stick and ask questions, and yeah luckily the bosses and advisors and mentors that I've found out in first place were good enough, so I did not have any trouble there. But yeah, I think that's what I think. Just keep on trying.
Thank you. So who's going to share? Flipping a coin?
I can take it.
Great. Thank you, Jamil.
I don't really like the question, how does one move forward? Because people have a connotation of moving forward. I like to think of it more as, how does one succeed? Because in order to succeed, like moving forward, people assume they need to get things done. But the fact that even if you are staying where you are, or you find things that you don't like, is a way that you can succeed. So I might do something and say, this is not for me. I failed in that. That doesn't mean that I didn't move forward. It's actually the opposite. I moved far ahead because now I know things that I don't like. So you guys might come to a point in your life where you're sitting down and say, I haven't learned anything new. I haven't found my passion. But if you flip it around, what are all the things you found out you don't like? I'd rather spend a month doing something I don't like than take a year to figure that out. So it's always good to rephrase the question and think about how much did you understand about yourself between the time that you started something to now. And I also agree with everybody in saying to find a mentor. If any of you, I talk a lot about screaming at ducks and weird things. The reason that I do that is not because I'm weird. Well, I am weird, but it's not because of that. So the reason I do that is to practice speaking, because at the end of the day, if I find somebody that I want to be like, I have no problem speaking to them and saying, hey, I'm interested in you being my mentor. Would you be interested in that? You have to practice speaking and start somewhere. And I'd rather practice speaking yelling at a duck than be in the middle of an interview and not know the correct words to say. So take those chances to be weird and do random things, because you can build off those skills and see, hey, these are some actually good points that I can learn from, or these are ways that I can learn to pronounce certain words, or how I can communicate my thoughts. It might not be the best way, but again, that's open to interpretation for all of you. So figure out how you can practice speaking and how to express yourself, because computer science and life in general is not about being by yourself. It's about being others. And when you surround yourself with others that are interesting and pick you up, then you can also succeed yourself.
Thank you. Alex.
Yeah, I would just, rather than add, just emphasize, I guess, one theme from Jamil and Apoorv, which is it's just as important to learn what you don't like to do or what you don't want to do, but do something. I feel like in careers and any jobs I've had, or anything I've tried, it's just as important to realize I didn't really want to do it, or I didn't like it. But nothing's a dead end, right? You can change. So it's okay if you're on the fence, for example, about an opportunity or something, it's okay to take it. You can change in 6 months or something.
Thank
By
you.
that I mean I didn't like robotics. It's my main point.
You didn't like robotics?
No, I did a thing in robotics. I wasn't a fan. Robots don't work. I don't know why people think they're going to take over the world. Just try getting them through the door first. It's a miracle they do anything at all.
So I'm going to say, who wants to answer this one? How to say no? I know, Jamil, this was a favorite of yours. Time management, conflict resolution, saying no to people. Would you like to start? We're getting a little short on time, so we can each be quick here.
Yeah, I really like helping people, but at the end of the day, I had to decide, like, the person that's worth most of my time is myself, and I needed to figure out how best to manage my time. Because between all of the Zoom meetings to have Zoom meetings, mentoring other students, learning my own class, it got kind of difficult. And I had to figure out the best way of optimizing my time so I could be successful. And I can help. The only way that I can help other people is by helping myself first. So I had to start taking time and figuring out, is it worth my time? Do I have time to do it? And most of the time it was actually no. And I felt like I was being the bad guy for telling other people no. But then I flipped it and I decided, am I being the bad guy to them, or am I being a good person to myself? And I like to think that I'm being a good person to myself because I'm doing much better mentally and I have more time for myself. And I started a garden, so it works itself out in the end. And the people who decided to get upset that I said no weren't worth my time to begin with, because they were probably just taking advantage of me. Nice.
Sounds about right. Is it worth my time, and do I have the time to do it? Good question to ask yourself.
Yep.
Would anyone else like to add their 2, 3, 4, 5 cents on how to say no? What techniques do you use? What tips? Narine?
Yeah, I would say has been one of the hardest things for me to figure out how to do. I just I like helping people and stuff, but very early on, I realized that it's going to be very tricky. And especially very recently, this has become a big deal because as InSpace was scaling very fast and a lot of people had a lot of questions. And and then there's it's kind of interesting when we had different feature requests and all this stuff, you have to kind of learn where to kind of stop and kind of say no. And so what I have done, I sort of compartmentalized it. And so I have different seasons of life, right? So I basically chop everything by a couple of months. And so a couple of months, I have the goal, community building, etc. So then I say more yes on that direction, or some months it's about sort of, focusing more on separate things. So I feel when I do that, then it's easier because I know I say yes more towards specific things in specific times. So there's time and place for them. So I don't feel I'm missing out on anything conferences and stuff. There's a specific time spot for them. So somehow compartmentalizing helped me to kind of feel better about sort of doing that.
Great, thank you. Alex, Apoorv, how do you say no?
I would compartmentalizing and scheduling is what Narine said. It's really, for example, I got an email from a student this morning asking me to look at their code, and I don't have time. I said I'd love to, but no, I have these things to do, right? So, and also I feel you there, Narine, on feature requests. There's a lot more feature requests than there are people to do them, and by a factor of n factorial or so. So,
thank you.
Send us an email. Come join us.
So for saying no, I think a lot of times what happens is the awkwardness when you have to say no. You keep on thinking about, oh, the other person is going to be mad at me for saying no, which is usually not the case. I think that was one of the biggest hurdles that I had to, go over. Is well, the other person understands, and that the other person is an individual, intelligent individual being. And when you say that, oh, I cannot do this, they're not gonna just be hung up and stop being friends with you, or stop talking to you completely. If you try to explain as to, well, I cannot do this because I have certain other more important things that I feel are important to me, that kind of eases out the pressure of saying no. It's just that I'm not saying no because I don't like you, but it's because something, but it is because of something that I cannot do. So yeah.
Did you just say it's not you, it's me?
Yes. And it's true. Okay, so as we wrap up or near our wrapping up, we have a really, really strong question here. What is the best career advice you've ever received? And I also do see questions are coming in the slide app. So what is the best career advice you've received? Who would like to take this one first?
I can go first. The career advice that I got was from one of my cousins, and he was, I think it was about the time when he was getting into entrepreneurship, and he was like, well, you have two ways to live your life, right? One is, what kind of life do you want to lead in the sense of financial stability, right? Do you want like a walk-in closet to earn you a lot of money, or are you happy not earning money and solving problems that you like? Usually you would end up in one of those two buckets. It's really hard to find a thing that you do which gives you both. So in that case, think about what kind of life do you really want, and choose that. So that was one of the guiding factors of the career that I chose. I don't care about money much, and hence I'm in grad school. But yeah.
Thanks. Alex?
I don't know if anyone ever told me this, but when it comes to career advice or just advice in general, I just feel, maybe it's a bit narcissistic, but the advice I would offer is just don't take advice from people that haven't been in a similar situation. And the best advice I ever got, the best career advice I ever got, was from someone that was willing to be honest with me because they'd been in a similar situation. Like, I was deciding on, I had quit this web agency job, and I had multiple offers from startups that I was working with that were just basically trying to poach me. And I was going to go with one because I really liked the guy. And someone asked that worked in startups, they go, do you really, really believe in what this startup is doing? Like, would you sell it to literally anyone? Would you? And I was like, not really. And they're like, well, then don't work with them. So I don't know. I think I just feel, seek out people that have been, if you're in a pickle, seek out people that have been in similar pickles.
Thank you. I can't say that 3 times fast, so.
I also, it was a tough time at the first one, so.
Narine, what is the best career advice you've ever received?
Actually, someone once kind of told me, like, go with your gut. If it feels right, then it's probably right. So sometimes you gotta just sort of put the logic aside and just kind of say what feels right, because chances are that your first answer is the right long-term answer.
Thanks. And Jamil?
My late father always had a saying, it doesn't matter if you get your degree in basket weaving, just make sure you're the best basket weaver there is. And I think it's really good. It doesn't really matter how I decide to move forward, as long as the way that I'm moving forward, I put my 100% into it. And I've been living with that since I started college, and it's been pretty helpful in moving forward in different degrees. And even in my career, whatever I ended up doing, I put 100% into it. And I made sure, as Alex said, if I can't sell it to somebody else, I can't sell it to myself.
Very true. If you wouldn't buy it, why would anybody else?
Yeah.
So we do have a question in the slide. Let's see. What advice would you give your younger self? And we also have another one that will come up, and then we need to kind of close out. I'll say, in general, is it normal to not feel ready after the undergrad experience? So let's start with what advice would you give your younger self? And this will be the second to last question. Jamil?
The advice I'd give myself, it's okay to be weird. And alongside that, communication is key in a lot of things. There's a lot of undergraduates here. I'll let you in on a little secret. Getting the answer correct by yourself is not as good as getting the wrong answer in a group. A lot of people might say differently, but that's my strong opinion. Because if you collaborate with other people, as you would in any real life situation, whether you're working in academia or industry, it's better to communicate your ideas and learn how to communicate your ideas than to get a right answer and sit down in a corner and just say it's the right answer. That comes off as narcissistic to a lot of people, and you're never going to be in a situation where you're going to be in a corner by yourself working on a project and whatever the answer is, that's it. You're going to have to work in groups and sell your product to them. You're going to have to decide how to communicate your ideas. So I have imposter syndrome whenever I go to class and like all these other guys are sitting in the corner getting things right. And here I am in a study group trying to like manage with a 75 or an 80. But the communication skills that I learned and how to use those and communicate what's going on, it's really good. Because I remember the group sessions that I had with other people, and I remember sitting down and arguing these concepts and ideas with them. But the other people who were able to knock stuff out, they just memorized it for that time. And then once the class ended, they forgot about it. So at the end of the day, even though I didn't get as good scores, I ended up retaining more of the information that helped me later on. So
thanks.
Communication is key.
Communicate. What advice would you give your younger self? Communicate. Got it. Narine?
Okay, so I have two. One is super weird. So actually, after graduation, I found this app. It's called Aptiv. I found it so cool. Like it's a fitness app that literally kind of motivates you to exercise and do stuff. And I always kind of went to gym and stuff. But like this is like top level motivation that I could sort of just. I was like, I wish I knew about this sooner. It was like one of those things. But the other thing was like really in grad school, like really just take a little easy, like, and just go a little easy on yourself. Because, you know, when I graduated, I realized I actually didn't take any sick days the entire time I was in grad school. And I didn't realize this until I graduated. And I was like, you know, just take it a little easy. You'll get there, you'll graduate, you'll get your degree, you'll accidentally stumble upon something that's really cool and innovative. And all of a sudden you'll have your dissertation. But until then, it's super stressful until you find that thing. So yeah, I would probably say just take it easy.
Take it a little easy. Thank you. Alex, what advice would you give your younger self?
I'm with Narine. I mean, I would tell myself that Chipotle is going to catch up to you, Alex.
So ease up.
Health and fitness. Yeah, health and fitness get those started early.
Health and fitness.
It's harder.
And keep up with it. Thanks. Apoorv, what advice would you give your younger self?
That's a tough one. Maybe something on the lines of, keep exploring. Keep exploring different things, and the more you explore, the more you try to connect different dots that you learn. It will be much better.
Keep exploring. I like that. You never know what you might discover.
Yeah.
Just because it's something that we don't know in front of us, we don't need to fear it. We can keep going carefully, but keep going and take it a little easy. Focus on our health and our fitness. Learn to say no. Awesome. You have all been so amazing. Thank you so much. We have a final question here, and it has been boosted up with the thumbs up. Let me just grab it and present it. Rather long, but you can see it. It seems long. It's not really. In general, is it normal to not feel ready after the undergrad experience? More along the lines of not fully grasping the material taught and taking the time to refresh or relearn, or going into things involved in CS that you did not do when you were an undergrad. I can definitely say it's totally normal. And please, Narine, Alex, Apoorv, Jamil, add your 10 cents.
Beyond normal. Narine, you can go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, totally. Same thing here. Totally normal. You just like, I think what you really learn in undergrad, how to think. And that's the most important part. And then when you come out of it, you're like, well, I don't remember all the specifics. And that's totally okay because you learn how to think without actually knowing about it. And then what I found is like afterwards when I was teaching, that is the best way to learn. Teaching someone else something is like the best way to learn.
Yeah, I when I graduated and got my first job, I mean, we talk about imposter syndrome, which is what you're kind of describing, honestly. But we talk about it like, I mean, I literally felt like an imposter. I literally thought that people were going to like figure out that I didn't know what I was doing and that I was going to get fired. So but the fact is you have a lot of time and they'll wait for you to learn it, and you don't need to know everything that you don't need to, I don't remember a lot of, no one here remembers a lot of what they learned in undergrad. But when you get it to the job, you learn how to do the job.
When you get into the job, you learn how to do the job, Alex, and teach it to someone else. That's when you really learn. Narine, Apoorv, Jamil.
Apoorv.
Yeah. Sorry, you want to
go?
Apoorv. So it's completely normal, of course. And what I realized was that there are two kinds of learnings, right? One, or this basic set of solutions that you accumulate in your knowledge base, in your knowledge base up there, is one is kind of need based, and the other one is just solutions that sit in your head. So need based are usually the things that you always do, where if you're on the job, you learn how to do it. Which is okay, right? And the other things that you really learn in undergrad are more like the things that you might need in real world, which might not be the case. So in that case, you just refresh, and there's this concept called iterative deepening, right? Every time you reread something, you explore something new. Like even right now, when I read a research paper that I have read for 10th time, I would find one new sentence that makes complete different sense. So it's just you keep on exploring new things even when you redo stuff. So that's one too.
And
thank you. And Jamil,
to piggyback off that, as everybody said, it's completely normal to do it. Undergraduate does not make you you know everything. Undergraduate is to give you a taste of a lot of things so you understand the general ideas to move forward. So when you have an undergraduate degree, even a master's degree, and maybe a PhD, depending on what you get your PhD in, but all of them are to give you a general understanding of a couple of different fields and allows you a better way of thinking. Once I finish with my PhD program, I'm going to be very understood in a very specific area. I might not be the most understood, and I might have other people who have been doing the same thing that I've been researching for twice my lifetime. So it's not about feeling ready, it's about being ready. And the way that you get ready for the job after your undergraduate experience is to understand the best way to think and how to tackle problems, because that's all undergraduate is really teaching you. Given a scenario, how can you solve that problem with the information you currently have at hand? And that can be put into any category, whether you're in school, academia, industry.
Thank you. So that's it for our questions. Thank you very much. This has been a really good panel. We can move on from here. And I did promise a raffle, didn't I? So I'm trying to move through. I'd like to say thanks to you. Thanks to everyone who took the time to join us tonight and participate in this event. And we do have certain announcements. Raffle. If you can fill out the survey just so that we can collect your names and add them. Give us 1 sec. Survey GVG Bronx. I'm putting it into the chat.